Welcome to Snakes and Adders. We're continuing our introducing series on lizards by today discussing probably one of the most popular lizards kept in captivity, and that is the leopard gecko. This species is native to Afghanistan, Iraq, Iran and areas of Pakistan. There are different subspecies available, but because this is a beginner video, we're only going to be discussing Eublepharis macularis, which is the leopard gecko. There are different species which are far more sought after and incredibly high value, especially in their pure form, but the likelihood of a beginner actually coming across those and keeping those is relatively low. So we'll deal with the leopard geckos. Leopard geckos are tame, manageable, hardy, wonderful little lizards that reach about 25 centimetres full grown. There are some giant strains out there that may add about 5 centimetres onto the overall length. They vary slightly in size. Your males are going to be bigger built and far more muscular than your girls. This is an adult female. A male would probably be 10-15% bigger than this in all dimensions. They have granular scale, which is very soft, and they obviously have a fat storing tail. Now you can see the annulations on the tail. Each of these rings is an area where the tail can be executed, chopped off. Now, it takes a lot of stress to pull one of these off, or a lot of pull. So if the tail comes off a leopard gecko, there's something gone drastically wrong. The good thing about leopard geckos is they will regenerate this tail, but the annulations, these rings, will no longer be there. It will be smooth. It will look like a turnip or a carrot just coming out the end. And they can also grow in forks and all sorts of craziness. So at all costs, we're going to try and keep this tail in place. These aren't the sticky pad geckos like the ones with the lamellae, which is tokay geckos, Moorish geckos, crested geckos. This guy has got claws. He's a burrowing ground dweller. He's crepuscular, which means he's out at dawn and dusk. In the heat of the day, it's far too extreme, and in the cool of the night, again, it's too cool. So it's active during very set periods. So the temperature range we generally keep these at is between 28 and 30 degrees at the hot spot, and then they'll be able to move away from that. Also of note is that not all geckos have got eyelids, and you'll see geckos cleaning their eyes with their tongue. This guy has got eyelids, so he can close his eyes. They are absolutely fabulous lizards. They are tame, manageable, and when we're selling them to beginners, or we get little Mary or little Billy in for their first lizard, this is one of our go-to species because they're so hardy and so trusting, and if you work with them regularly and handle them on a regular basis, they will be one of the most rewarding lizards that you can keep. They are egg layers. They're going to lay 2 eggs at a time. Depending on the temperature that you incubate the eggs at, you can actually manipulate whether you end up with boys or girls. Unfortunately, the boys hatch quicker than the girls at a higher incubation temperature. So on the market there is an overabundance of males and a smaller amount of females. The nature of the beast is that people want to turn their eggs round as quick as possible, and they're producing boys all the time. So girls are relatively hard to come by. There's a technique for sexing geckos, if this guy will let me. As we look at just above the vent where the bum is, there is a V of scales, which will look different to the others. Even on the girls, they have a little tiny set of dots on the centre of each scale, just above that vent. They are called pre-anal paws, and on a male they're swollen, and also you have hempenal bulges just past the vent as well. So these are aids for how to sex them. 2 males will not tolerate each other in the same vivarium. You can keep a group of leopard geckos together as adults, but you mustn't do it as babies. Juveniles will establish a pecking order and hierarchy, and what you will end up with is accelerated growth in one gecko and then others that lag behind because of this dominance issue. If you're going to introduce leopard geckos, you want to maybe breed them, or you want to have a group, or you've got a couple of children, then my advice would be that you buy 2 adults, preferably a girl or a girl and a boy. The breeding impact of leopard geckos is relatively low, just a couple of eggs at a time. Make sure that you use a broad spectrum multivitamin a couple of times a week, which also contains vitamin D3 in its makeup. You will see certain sites that recommend UV light. Having visited many leopard gecko breeders on big scales, they're generally not using UV light. Now, I'm not ruling it out, and I'm not saying it mustn't be used. What you've got to be careful of, though, is the dermal layers and the layers of the skin transmit UV very, very easily, and it's easy to give effectively the gecko sunburn where you fuse the dermal layers together. So you've got to be very careful. So it only wants to be low power UV, maybe 2%, and that can be on during the day. But with your animal being crepuscular, that brighter light may encourage your gecko to hide away even more. Make sure you stay on top of your calcium powders and your multivitamin powders that contain vitamin D3. This helps to keep the bones strong and replenish calcium supplies for your females as they're producing eggs. They can produce between 4 and 6 litres a year. And like I say, maintenance wise, they're not particularly difficult. The main things that go wrong with geckos are going to be metabolic bone disease, and that's because they've not had enough vitamin D3. So that means that they develop something that is akin to rickets in humans. Bow legs, loose shoulder sockets, can't support their own weight. They might develop very floppy cranial structures, and the maxilla, which is the lower jaw, is all bendy and floppy, and they can't attack their prey properly. So it's incredibly important that we make sure that we've got nice strong bone that doesn't give way under pressure. They're solid. This animal's been raised correctly. She's a proven female. She's a lovely girl. The other problem is shedding issues. Even though we're dealing with a gecko from Afghanistan, Iraq, Iran, when they take to their burrows, they're going to be at a far higher level of humidity because they're closer to the water table. So it's imperative that we offer them a moss box or wet hide towards the warm end to encourage evaporation and thus raising humidity, and that will help your animal shed. The sheds will collect around the nostrils, around the feet, and around the tail tips and vent. It must be made sure that all of this is removed every time they shed. You may need to help assist in removing bits that are left on the toes. If we don't, then we end up nipping off the toes eventually. The skins keep building up, they cut off the circulation to the toe, and then the toe is basically amputated where the blood supply stops. It's an unfortunate thing and it's totally unnecessary. In 2017, we should have got our husbandry right. We've got the thermostats to control temperature. We can make sure that we're offering this gecko as much as possible in the way of care, and there is no excuse for losing toes, tail tips, or any of that business. Okay? I hope you've enjoyed the videos. We're going to keep them coming. The geckos are a big family, so there's going to be lots of different geckos from different families throughout the introducing series. We're going to get through them as quick as possible. We're going to be covering the skinks, obviously, some of the agamids. So yeah, we're just going to keep rifling through. Keep following the videos. Visit the website, which is www.snakesandadders.co.uk, to see what we're all about. Cheers.